Welcome back everyone, this is Joe. In this video I am going to show you how to get data in Power BI using Python and then how to make a Python visual using some Python script, some of which we have already written. So if you've been following along, open up your DSBB pandas worksheet. We're picking up right where we left off at the end of the last one. If you don't have this, I encourage you to go back to the beginning of the series to watch everything, or just at the very least the Python playlist. Please subscribe and follow along with us. That's how this is meant to go. But you should be able to at least follow along with these steps just by observing if you don't have this script. But if you do, start in cell 1 here and do a cell run all. We're just going to do some prep to make sure everything is ready to pull into Power BI the way we want it. And we did the map function at the end of the last video, so if you scroll all the way down, you will notice an error somewhere around here where we say look at, so about 3/4 of the way down, look at life expectancy stats, and then we describe life expectancy. You should see an error because we didn't include this line of code to change the object type, or the data type rather, back to a float. So if you were to make a new cell under this check number of words and unique entity list and run your LEDF D types for data types and do a control enter, you won't see life expectancy as a float. So you can delete that. We have to change it back to a float, and you would do it like this. You would select your life expectancy column from your LEDF, set it equal to the same thing. You select it, but you do a dot as type. You chain this function on the end of it and then call it a float, right? It's currently a string, str, but you want to make it a float, and run that, and then you should be able to run your describe and it will give you your statistics there. So your next cell should run then. So just after you do that, just go ahead and run everything under it individually. So run this one by clicking this button here. Scroll down, you should be able to run this one. Scroll down, you should be able to run this one, and shouldn't have any issues all the way down to this point here. Now these last two cells I pre-wrote, but I'm going to take you through them, and in fact we can rewrite them together. So make a new cell under your Italy United States life expectancy group, and we'll make a new LEDF mean, because what we want to pull into Power BI is this right here, this visual where we have all of the entities and then all of the mean life expectancies. Why bring in just Italy and the United States? We're just going to grab the original data set, original data frame, and group everything by entity and then get the mean. So we don't have 3,000 plus rows, but we have 14, all of the countries, and then all of their life expectancies. This is how we want to ready the data to see it in Power BI. So what you do is you grab your original data frame, and we did something like this before. We're selecting a list of what we want, so life expectancy and entity. So after your quote, grab entity, and you can see we want both of these right down in our visual below. So then we group by one of them, which is entity. So group by as a function, open close parentheses, and then do a single list of entity. You actually shouldn't need the brackets if you're just selecting one thing, so I can remove them there. And this as index is false. Let's leave that off for now, and I'll show you what it does if you don't have that. So then just do a dot mean at the end of it, and you can do control enter. And to display it, that ran successfully, but to display it, let's just do LEDF mean at the very end, and right here it has made entity your index, which might be okay, but we want it to just be a flat table of 2 columns here to avoid any issues in Power BI. So if you add this comma in your group by, this is an argument in group by, as index equals false, then you should be good to go, and entity will move over as a regular column and it'll add a new index for you. So that's completely fine. And then I can delete the one that I did down here. And I hesitated to do any matplotlib in this course. There's a couple things that we're not going to cover just because I feel like it would open up a can of worms, and matplotlib being one of them. This is for visuals and plotting graphs and scatter charts and whatnot, but we're already doing that in Power BI, so I'm showing you one way to do it. And in fact, when we bring this over to Power BI, we'll recreate this visual, and then I'll just show you how to make a simple bar chart in Power BI, kind of like we did in RStudio when we just touched on plotting in ggplot and then made pretty much the exact same scatter chart in Power BI. So not going to touch too much on matplotlib except for this purpose here. But in any case, we need this line of code down here. You should be able to just import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. So import needed dependencies to plot in Power BI. Go ahead and make this comment, make this, or enter this line of code rather, import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. You shouldn't have to do, if you still get an error, do this pip install. It's a one-time matplotlib.pyplot, and then after you run it, you shouldn't have to run it again. So comment it out. I'm going to leave it commented out. Import that. You can do it in the same cell as this line of code here or in a different cell. Doesn't matter. But so I'll leave that there and then make a new comment. So plot a bar chart with entity on x-axis and life expectancy means on y-axis. So this is how you would do that in matplotlib. You would, and I'll just rewrite it, take your LEDF mean that you just created, you do dot plot, so this is the function, kind equals bar. You could also do scatter here or line, right? But then you need all of the correct arguments afterwards, so don't worry about that for now. We're just barely touching on this. So it's a bar chart, and then you need an x and y axis. So I pretty much wrote it in the description. Your x is entity, your y is life expectancy, and then that's it. That's all you need to do, and then you just do this plt.show. So let's do that, and open close parentheses, and there you have it here. So now let's jump over to Power BI. So on a Windows, you can just do Power BI desktop, right? Grab your latest Power BI desktop app, and mine might look different from when we installed it way back earlier in the series. That's okay. Power BI, Microsoft, they make it pretty intuitive, so we should still be able to follow along if this is a newer version. There's a newer version practically every month, so it would be really hard to keep up. But once you open up the application, you should get to a screen that looks like this. You can just X out. If you haven't updated, it'll probably appear in the lower right hand corner, so feel free to update. I'm not sure if this one will look different from yours or not. So first thing we want to do, go to File, Options and Settings, and Options. I had multiple versions of Python installed on my computer, so this was giving me a lot of issues. I want to make sure that I address it with the group here. Go to Python Scripting, and you need to make this home directory the place where your latest version of Python lives, or at least the version of Python that you're using. So we were just scripting in Jupyter Notebook. Whatever version of Python you're using here, you need to figure out where it's installed and then make sure that's your home directory here. So you might need to change it, browse for it. A good way to do that is just open up your command line interface. So I have a little shortcut saved, but if you just do Windows CMD, you should be able to click the command prompt, and then you could do Python -- version, and then that will get you Python 3.8.3. So, where is that installed? You could run this little piece of code here. Well, do Python enter first, and okay, now it's actually running Python. So then you can run, I just copy and pasted it, do os.path.dir name for directory name, and then system executable. So in the parentheses, sys.executable, and then click enter. And okay, if OS is not defined, just do import OS and then run that again. So I did import OS. You also have to import system potentially, so import sys, and then you can do os path.dir name sys.executable, executable. Enter, and then this is the location that I use then in Power BI. So just navigated to it, and there you have it. So then I can do an exit from command line. I think. Exit parentheses. There we go. And then exit again. There we go. So click OK there, and then you can do get data. Let's actually pull the data in now. We can do more. So Python script, connect. And now we're going to pull from our CS. We're just going to pull the CSV file in, but rather than get the data from the CSV file, which we could also do, we're just going to write Python script to grab it from our computer. So we need to know where that CSV file lives, exactly how we pulled it in the first time. So I have it saved in my DSBB folder. If you've been following along, you probably have it in the same place. So you can just do a right click on it and properties and grab the path from location and then pop it into your script. And then you also need the file name, so do another slash, and if you know it, you could just type it or copy it from here. And let's put it in quotes, actual double quotes. Sometimes it's finicky, and then we'll do the R string that we talked about before it. And let's put this in a variable, so CSV underscore path equals. So I'm going to click enter a few times and also import pandas as PD and import matplotlib.plt as. Let's double check this. So let's go back to Jupyter Notebook for a second. And so what I'm doing there with the CSV path is exactly what we did in this second cell, except I needed to find the entire path because we're not in the same directory as we were in when we were doing this coding here in Jupyter Notebook, right? I only needed to specify the file because the file's in the same place as the notebook itself. But now I'm specifying the entire path using an R string and double quotes, and then I'm still going to do this ledf equals pd read CSV. So we can copy that, but before you even navigate back, let's double check that I did this right. So matplotlib.pyplot as plt. So we also want to import this. Might not be necessary at this stage, but I still want to make sure that we're doing everything right. So pyplot as plt. And then under the CSV path, we can paste what we selected there. From here, enter. And now we need to go grab our piece of code where we started to refine the data set a little bit. So get back to your Jupyter Notebook, and then at the very bottom, right, we're not going to plot this yet. We'll do that on the visual itself, but we want to grab this ledf mean. So then head back. I'm doing Alt-Tab to head back, and then paste this into the mix here. So we have our ledf. Our ledf mean then grabs these two columns, does a group by on entity, no index, means, and then you have your ledf here. But last step, just do a print ledf mean, and that will be our final table for BI. This is the sourcing the data. I have a bad habit of commenting after the fact, so should do this before really, and dependencies, which we might not need at this stage, but they're here. They don't hurt anything, so let's do an OK. And while this connects to Python, it should pop up then just the mean data frame, but we'll see what it gives us here under options. Not sure if it'll give us both the original read-in or just the final output. It looks like it is giving us multiple. So we can click this caret here. It's going to take a second to load. And okay, it actually did give us both of them. So if you click ledf, you should see the original one. So all the countries, non-unique entities, right, for every year. This is a lot of rows. This is not what we're after. We're after this one here. So we can uncheck ledf, and this is our 14 rows. all of the mean life expectancies for the entities. So let's click transform data just to inspect this for a quick second. We can check our data types to make sure that they are accurate. And in Power BI, this is super easy. We don't need to like jump into advanced setting or anything. We can just see that there's ABCs here for letters and there's a 1.2 for a decimal. So if you click it, you can see all of the different data types. And there's nothing wrong with this data set, this table. It's a data set now that's in Power BI. It's just a one table data set, and that's all we'll need. So click close and apply and let this load. I'm going to pause the video and then come back. Okay, looks like we're loaded up, so click the blank canvas. One last thing to do here, click Python, this Py visual, and you'll have to enable scripting. Like we did in R, you can do a default code editor, but I'm not sure if you can use Jupyter Notebook. You probably want to use something like VS Code if you're doing a lot of this, but I'm not even going to worry about a code editor. I'm just going to code right here in this little script editor. So before we pull in our matplotlib code, let's just do entity and life expectancy. We're going to need both of them. As long as we're selected on the visual, it will generate some commented out code for you and put values in here, and now you can paste your script right here. So if we go back to Jupyter Notebook, we could just do all of this code here and make sure your pip installer is commented out. You should just get rid of it at this point. Do your import, which again you may or may not need to do at this point. And this PLT show, make sure that is at the bottom. So we might need to change a little bit of this, but let's go ahead and try to run it by clicking this button here. And yep, it's giving us an error. I think it's because LEDF mean is not defined. So now we have it's called dataset. That's what it's telling you here in this commented out section. The following code to create a data frame and remove duplicates is executed before your script. So it's telling you LEDF mean is not your data set. It's called dataset. And you should be able to plot entity and life expectancy because these columns here match what you dragged into the mix. And this should not give you any problems now. If you click play or run, it looks like a play sign. And now we have our matplotlib visual here. So you can resize it. If you click out of the editor, it should go away for you. I am just going to quickly show you now. If you click over here on the right and then click entity and life expectancy again, it's very easy to recreate this in Power BI. So I'm going to do just some resizing so it's a nice clean side by side. If you click the Python visual, it's going to bring your script up again. So just click out of it. If you select your table now, right, this is a table right now, it's on this visual, but we want a bar chart, like a stacked column chart it's called. So you can just click on this one, and now we basically have the exact same chart here as we do over here, but there is a little bit of a different order. So you can run through some customization of the chart, like the colors, for example. You can try to make it match if you wanted to as an exercise. So a little darker, but drop a title onto here, and we've gone over this already. So two quick things though. This right now is on sum of entity. So if you expand this over here, go to values, life expectancy, hit the caret, it's on sum. You probably want to change it to average, but since the columns are unique, the sum and the average is the same because there's only one number per country, but it's something to call out if you do end up with a data set with multiple entities, non-unique entities. You definitely want to make sure you change that, and just by changing this to average, it now really closely mimics this chart over here. But if it didn't change it to alphabetical order, you can always click this top part here and then do sort axis, and then you can do it by entity, and then now it's doing it the opposite direction, but you can sort ascending if you re-click it instead of descending, and then it'll go A to the United States. So it's a little bit bigger than the one on the right, but if I shrink it down, it looks pretty similar, and we know that we have the same chart recreated in two different ways, two different methods. So if I click on everything up here, It makes it a little easier to see. Don't forget there's always focus mode too if you want to look into something and see it a little bigger. But that's all for now. So do a file, save your work, and I'll save this one as DSBB Power BI, just Python_Python. And we'll work inside of here for the next couple videos, so make sure you have that handy, and we will see you in the next one.